welcome, welcome you again. And our today's speaker is Dr. Pratishtha Mathur, Professor, Department of Information Technology at Manipal University, Jaipur. She is going to take the session on Introduction to Deep Learning and Clustering. Over to you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Priyanka.
Welcome.
And good morning, everyone. So I have to reshare my screen, or is it visible?
Yes, ma'am, you have to reshare your screen, I think.
Okay. Just hello. मैं बाद में बात करती हूँ. So is it visible now to everyone?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, so very good morning to one and all present here. My name is Dr. Pratishtha, as already Priyanka introduced me. So today I will discuss a brief introduction of deep learning and again an introductory part of the clustering also, and how we can do it for the different AI application. So the today's topic is introduction to deep learning and clustering. So before going into the depth of the deep learning, So before going into the depth of the deep learning, I'll start my presentation or my session with a brief introduction to artificial intelligence. As the title of the FDP is that the applications of the AI and the machine learning. So AI is not actually a very new concept. It is a very old concept, or we can say from decades we are learning and we are working with these AI applications. So as the term has two words, basically, the artificial intelligence. And what we generally assume that being a human being, or we say most of the animals, we assume ourselves as an intelligent. And whatever we are behaving, whatever we are doing, whatever decision we are taking, all those are basically the symptoms of our intelligence. And so what we say that we are the intelligent one. Okay. So, and if we talk about in terms of the machine, generally what we say that our machines work according to the instructions. So whatever instructions we give, they work accordingly. So you can say they are dumb in the nature. Fine. So if we want our system to be an intelligent, or we want to design such intelligent system, then a term comes into the existence, that is artificial intelligence. That means the one who is not naturally intelligent, but we are making it intelligent. And by making it intelligent means it behave like an intelligent one or an intelligent system. Okay? So if we go into a definition part of it, maybe it is already covered in some of your lectures, but briefly I will tell you that it is basically, if we design such a system which is working, or which is doing such a task which normally requires the intelligence, such as the perception. So the perception can be, we can view the things, we can analyze the things. So visual perception means we have a vision capability, we can view the things and we can analyze what objects are there, we can recognize them, we can analyze them, we can describe them. So all those come how we perceive. So that is visual perception. You people are able to understand my voice, you are able to understand whatever I am speaking, so you are recognizing some speech. So speech recognition is again an intelligent task. Intelligent, whatever we told, whatever task we are doing, we have to take time to time decision, and accordingly we have to behave. So decision making. So all such behaviors are basically need some intelligence. And for that, if we develop such certain system, if a machine is able to do all such kind of a task, we can say that our system or a machine is an intelligent machine. Okay? So it was a big discipline, and lot of foundation is required to understand this particular discipline. Basically, we need the mathematics knowledge, we need logic, philosophy, probability, linguistic, neuroscience, and in fact the decision theory. And under this umbrella of AI, lot of subfields are there which are developed gradually. Those you can name as computer vision, robotics, machine learning, natural language processing, and many more. Okay, so basically the objective is that we want to make our system an intelligent system. Now, initially, if we develop our kids also, or if we are doing something or we are taking decision, lot of processes involved in that, and all those process we have to understand, and similar kind of process we have to do with the machine also, and we have to make our system an intelligent system. Okay, so you can say that this AI is a complete umbrella under which there are a lot of such sub-disciplines are there, and amongst them this machine learning is one of them. So before now we come to the machine learning or deep learning. Before that, a brief 1 or 2 minutes on the AI past, present, and future. So nowadays everybody is talking about AI. So sometimes it seems that, oh, this is something new. But as all of us are teachers, you know that from from 20 years back also I was learning as a course, that AI course. So it is not very new. So what happens suddenly that it is in a boom and everyone is talking about the AI and machine learning only. And even people are saying like that the coming revolution or this revolution is basically an AI revolution. So what happens suddenly in this particular domain? So the concept comes way back in 1940s. Even the term itself, this artificial intelligence, was coined by the John McCarthy in 1956. And gradually, when in the various conferences, they discuss about such kind of a system, they develop some initial systems like general problem solver and on. In 1980s, it will become little bit popular when there was an existence of the system which we call the expert system. So normally if I say that I am a good teacher, or somebody says that I am a good doctor, and we want to consult somebody who is good in some particular expertise domain, so we'll say that he is a medical professional and he is expert in his domain. So what is our expectation is one who is expert. So we want such expertise in the system, and those systems are basically categorized as an expert system. So a lot of such systems were developed at that time, and those few names are like Mycin, Dental, etc., etc. This system are basically behaving like the human being. Okay, but that was a history. Gradually, AI was only studied, and it was only at the research level. People were doing making different kind of systems, but actually the practical real life uses were very, very limited, and the tasks are also done only in the domain specific areas, and actual real life applications people were not able to make with a certified test, you can say. So there were tests also which come into the existence, like Turing test and all. So that was a test of intelligence, means if there is a machine or there is a human being, if we are not able to identify whether the response is from the machine or it is from the human being, then we'll say that if the machine is not able, we are not able to identify that this response is from the machine, then we'll say that that particular system is good enough. So that kind of systems were not into the existence. But in a present scenario, if we see, there are a lot of such systems which are already in the existence. we have a lot of our personal, our mobile phone, everything. We say that Siri do this and Siri is able to do this, that. Even in the COVID scenario, you have seen that lot of robots are introduced into the healthcare sectors. In the hospitals, COVID hospitals, robots are serving the medicines and all. There are in IBM's Watson program, which is in the various games, they are winning the actual human experts. They are doing the healthcare task. So in the current scenario, lot of such applications, self-driving cars, Jeopardy game, Watson, in the healthcare, in the agriculture, everywhere we are looking that AI now come into the existence. Okay. So now if we feel, we'll say that, oh, a lot of AI research is going on, what will be the of it? So in the future is also because a lot of industrial revolution is still needed. So in some magazine, I heard that lot of AI and application, ML based application will be developed by the industries, and the next few year growths will be totally based on these two techniques. So we can say that this is just justification why we are in current scenario. Also, we are learning these AI, ML, and DL kind of thing. And mostly by 2045, a lot of work is done by one. We can say that we have a one. You can say डर है, what kind of thing fear we have, that what will happen if everybody will be controlled by the AI. So there will be a different scenario of jobs may be developed, and the statistics says that in the future there will be maybe into 2045 there will be 2 million new job opportunities which will be related to AI and data science. So AI was from 19th century, it is still there and it has the future also. A lot of interest comes in the AI, but it is now still, it is in a boom. Now AI, mostly nowadays what we are talking about is the applications which are related to the machine learning or the deep learning. So what exactly these things are, basically machine learning and the deep learning. So if we say that the AI is basically a big umbrella. So in this, if we define it as we did, that these are the programs, or we can say that these are the algorithms which are have an ability to reason, act, adapt, and basically it use certain logic, decision trees, and different kind of the learning things. Machine learning is basically that learns and improves from the data. So what is our objective is we want to learn the machine. Initially also we do the learning and we also take the decision, but for learning what we do is we generate the knowledge and we make the knowledge based system. Okay, and that knowledge is basically will store in the form of the data or rules and this, and those rules and knowledges are stored in some formal logic kind of a thing. So was a concept of the formal logic, and we need to understand lot of knowledge representation method and all, and then in that way we represent the knowledge. From those knowledge we need certain kind of the inferences engine, and then from those inferences we take the decision. Nowadays the learning become the data centric, so we have a availability of the lot of data, and because huge data sets are available, or we are capable to generate the data from lot of the web sources, so the machine learning is become the data centric, and what we have to do is we have to do this learning with the help of the machine learning. Okay. Now next is the deep learning. Now when we talk about the machine learning, what we do is we take the data, we extract some features from that data, and from those features we do the learning. Whereas when we come into the depth of the deep learning, you will see that these are the models which train themselves itself, they are training and they are doing a lot of tasks which are actually done for the learning purpose. So if we see a broader picture, you can say that artificial intelligence is a total umbrella. Under that, there is a machine learning. And then within that, there is a deep learning, which are based on ANN. Okay. So what exactly ANN? That is the artificial neural network. On that, these particular systems are built. Okay. So this is just a diagram. So the complete umbrella is AI. Within that, we have a lot of algorithms, which we can say that machine learning, or you can say a sub-discipline is a machine learning. And within that, the few machine learning algorithms, we can categorize a subset of machine learning algorithm, we can categorize as the deep learning algorithms. So it is basically a subset of machine learning which is based on the multi-layered neural network architecture. Okay, so again a term comes into the existence, that is the artificial neural network, and these deep learning is basically based on this artificial neural network. Before that, the machine learning was into the existence, and for learning, how we can learn. So there are, in theory, there are a lot of learning mechanism also. हम कैसे learn कर सकते हैं? Sometimes we learn, like suppose we mug something, so that kind of a learning was initially known as a rote learning. We can learn by the examples also. We can learn by different analogies also. So there was a conventional AI. There will, if we discuss, there will be lot of learning methodologies were there. But nowadays, with the you can say that when we are talking about the machine learning, we talk about three specific kind of learning. One is the supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and the reinforcement learning. Okay. So supervised learning means in presence of some supervisor or in presence of certain teacher, if you are learning, then that kind of a learning is a supervised learning. And if we talk about, if we are learning from a data, so in that sense, we say that it is a learning by a labeled example. Okay. So if I have a data set which is labeled, means if I want to learn that this is an apple, and I have the multiple pictures of an apple, and all those pictures are labeled with the label that is apple. Suppose there are a different class, say there is a class pictures of an orange, and then we have labeled them as an orange. So first what we will do is we will learn our machine with the help of this labeled training set. And once we learn, then if we pass any picture, if we test it, and if it is apple, it will classify it as an apple, and if it is an orange, it will classify it as an orange. So that kind of a learning is basically a supervised learning. Okay, means many times I'll say that 2 plus 2 is 4, 2 plus 3 is 5, and so on. Many such examples are there. So I know what is the answer. I do the learning. From that, I conclude something, and then some unknown case come to me. Then I will be able to answer it. That this is that particular class. Okay. So one example can be like a email spam detector. So if there is a lot of emails, you will classify them as spam or non-spam, and then you do the learning task. And if a new mail come, automatically transfer your mail either to a spam folder or a normal inbox. So that kind of examples are already in existence, and now every mail we have that kind of a categorization separation, and it is behaving means it is almost 99% will say that it is working accurately and effectively. Okay. Another category of learning is unsupervised learning. So because we are talking about two things, deep learning and clustering, so here this unsupervised learning is another important thing. In the unsupervised learning, there are applications in which we does not have the labeled data sets. Okay. In many applications, then we may not have a labeled data set, and then how we do the learning. Okay. So what we can do is, based on some intrinsic feature, what you can do is you can do a clustering, and then those clusters can, after doing a clustering, those clusters can be later on labeled based on that. So for example, if you have a lot of fruits, you don't know the name of the fruits initially, but you have an idea of a color, you have an idea of a shape, you have an idea of a size. So what you do is you make the cluster on the basis of the color, size and shape, and then those clusters can be named that, okay, this particular cluster is a class 1 or say apple, or class 2 some another kind of a fruit. Okay. So in those areas where we have lack of labeled examples, maybe some astronomical or some remote sensing based application or some area like that, where this kind of the, you can say, labeling is not possible. In those cases, what you can do is you can use the unsupervised learning. Even for the market prediction, for market categorization, even for finance, if you want to do some categorization, there also what we can do is we can use this kind of a unsupervised learning. And one of the best example of the unsupervised learning is this clustering. So we'll discuss it in little detail at the later stage. Third thing is the reinforcement learning. And in the reinforcement learning, what exactly the teacher is not present, but there is a feedback from the learning, whether whatever you are learning is correct or not. And from that particular learning, you are improving your game. For example, if you play in a game and your chance is a winning, moving towards a winning or towards a losing, so that is the feedback you are using, and with the help of that, what you are doing, you are doing, improving your the learning process. Okay, so somewhere this kind of a partial feedback based learning is important, and that kind of a learning is basically known as a reinforcement learning. And in machine learning, we have seen that we can do all these tasks of classification, clustering, prediction using all these kind of a method, which are based either decision tree, regression based, or the ANN based and all. So all these are basically under the umbrella of this machine learning. Okay. So basically what needed for machine learning is we need a lot of data, either labeled or unlabeled, but we need a data. And what we have to do is you have to learn from that particular data. Okay. Now, if you have a data, and because of the availability of the data, now what we need at our end is we need certain algorithms, and we want to extract the information from that particular data. We want to use that data for learning purpose. So we need certain algorithms which can, with the help of that, we can teach the computer. We can make simple algorithms. And as a computer scientist, what is our objectives? Our software engineering effort should be reduced. Okay, so in terms of everything, in terms of coding, in terms of time complexity, in terms of space complexity, many things we want to reduce, and we want, so there are a lot of improvement day by day in every machine learning area also, by which we are trying to simplify the things, we are trying to improve the reduce the complexities at different levels, and mostly we are also trying to reduce the development efforts also. So hand engineering algorithms, even hand crafted feature generations are also reduced, and that was the backbone in the development of the deep learning. Okay, so what exactly a deep learning is? So if we talk about the deep learning, so again the roots were in the artificial neural network, and this ANN also is not a new concept. So ANN was developed in 1980s and 90s. Then what new in this particular deep learning is? We are using, in fact, in my 2002 to 4 in one project, I was using the ANN self-organizing feature map and all. So that means way back there was artificial neural network. So what is new in this that we have to see? So It is a collection basically of simple trainable mathematical units which collaborate to compute a complicated function. So it is a collection, it is a network of a trainable mathematical unit, which is basically named as a neuron. And because it is a mathematical unit, so we'll say that it is an artificial neuron. And this analogy is taken from our biological brain. Okay, so we say that we have a neuron system. Once we touch the table, if it is say rough, immediate decision come into our mind that this is rough or a smooth or a clean or dirty. So that kind of a decision is in fraction of seconds or milliseconds we are able to do it. But how the things goes from here to our mind, so a network of neurons is behind that, and which is working in this direction. Okay, so you say that your skin, it is working as a sense organ, so you can say that whatever the neuron at your skin, they are working as an input neuron. And finally the one who in the brain which give the decision that it is a dirty or a clean or a smooth or whatever it is, that thing is your output neuron. In between there is a layer of neurons which, so a signal transform from one neuron to another neuron, and then there is a network of complete neuron which is there. So based on the same analogy, the concept of the artificial neural network come into the existence. And then this particular in deep learning, what we do is we make a layered architecture similar to our internal architecture. We try to make a layered architecture, and as we move towards the higher level, our level means information is more abstract, and that we will see in the further slides. Okay, so the thing is like that. Suppose this is your task. If you see a picture of a this cat, immediately if you are working with your brain, you will instantly you are able to say that this is a cat. So because we are aware, we have already learned with this particular kind of object, so we can recognize it easily. But how the machine will do it? So for that, there is a layered architecture as you see in the picture. And with the help of that, the final conclusion is that this particular object is a cat. Now this cat can be in different shapes, size, orientation, poses, different. Every cat, every image of cat should be mapped to a cat class. That is our objective. And if we do it 100% correct, we say that our system is behaving 100% correct. If we do it 97%, 90%, we will calculate how accurate we are, our machines are to classify all such things. So if we are using this kind of a deep learning architecture, then we'll say that layered architecture, then we'll say that it is a deep learning. Okay. Now, what is this? We are only giving the input as an image and we are getting the output as a cat. Internally, what happens? How you recognize that this is a cat? Some shape is in our mind. We have that how the cat looks like. And then with the help of those features, we also identify that this is a cat. So in deep learning, how this conclusion is come, that is important. Okay. So exactly if we say that what is the deep learning, if we talk about in short, what we'll say that deep learning means using a neural network with several layers of nodes between input and output. Fine. Now, why it is generally better than other type of algorithms which are already present for image, speech, and certain other types of data? Because mostly we'll see that we are using deep learning application for images, for videos, for speech, for textual data, for documents, and for a data which is a large, you can say dimensionality, high dimensional data, for which what we can we use these kind of deep learning algorithms we are using. Okay. So the answer again is that the series of layer between input and output do feature identification and processing in a series of stages, just as our brain seems to. Okay. We don't know how our brain does exactly till now also. So what exactly here we are trying to do is we have a series of layers, and the feature identification itself is done within this network. Okay, so earlier learning, even with a simple ANN model, our most of the time was in the field. So what we do is we take the data, we pre-process the data, we do the lot of feature engineering, we extract the features, we try to reduce the features, we try to reduce the dimensionality of the features, and then we pass these things to the appropriate network or the machine learning algorithm, and then we do the task. So one broad sense here, we can say that now the network is capable to learn the features itself, how it is, that we will see. So what is the main need? Why deep learning? Because that handcrafted feature extraction was very difficult. It was very time taking. It depends from domain to domain, and we have to give a lot of efforts in identifying those features, in extraction of those features, in reduction of those features. That kind of task is there when we were using the traditional machine learning algorithms. Okay. So you can see here in the diagram, so if there is a car, first your objective is you have to extract the features, you have to, then you apply certain machine learning algorithm, either SVM or AdaBoost or any such thing. Before that, if this particular features are again high dimensional, then you try to reduce the dimensionality also. And then you work a lot for dimensional reduction, and then you go for the learning algorithms, and then you get the output. And still you will see that the accuracy was not too high, because everybody was trying to improve uh, in those methods also. They are trying different optimization techniques, they are trying different extraction techniques, dimensionality reduction techniques, and all. Still not the much success was there, because most of the time was consumed or not exactly aware at what features we should extract. So it was very difficult task, feature extraction. Okay. So instead of using handcrafted features, or we can say the kernels, here we'll use the term kernel. If we are able to learn those kernel, then we'll say that the machine is learning itself. And that kind of facility or feature is incorporated in the deep learning. So that is the basic gist of this deep learning. Deep means earlier also there was a neural network architecture, but it was now deep in the nature. Why deep? That we have to see. Okay. So as I told you that the input, because our input is can be a big dimensional data, high dimensional data. So it's simple images there. If it is the image of a year, so you can say that is 1,000 cross 1,000. So lot of 1,000 cross 1,000 pixels are there. So a big data is there. If you take a real picture, if you take a real video, you can imagine what will be the size of your input data. Okay. So what is there? Our input is very big. Then second thing is, if there is an input as an image, you have to recognize the object in an image. So object recognition is one kind of application for which our deep neural networks. So it can recognize that this is a ear, or like in earlier example that this is a cat, or if there are two objects like it is a cat and dog. And if there is an image and you have to caption the image that this horse is running, basically the image related applications which you have applications are into the existence nowadays. Then comes the audio speech recognition. So speech also itself, we say that lot of speech data is there, and if you want to analyze this speech, I want to see what will be the next word, I want to predict it, I want to improve the noise, I want to say somebody is infected with a cochlear diseases, so I want to implant a cochlea, then how I can improve this quality of this. how I can make this particular system intelligent. So those applications are related to audio. Then if we are working on a social network or we are working on a web, if we want to rank such web pages or documents, how we can rank, how we can calculate the probabilities. So for information retrieval, we need such kind of a document ranking and something. So if we post a query and if we have multiple documents, how you can calculate the probabilities and extract the things. Okay. Or if there is a document, if it's a news article, how you can caption one particular article can be with the recent news also. So those kind of things are there in query processing. Even has a big thing, lot of translation jobs are there. So if from English you want to German, from English you want to Hindi, Udia, and all lot of NLP applications are there. So this kind of learning we can do with the help of these deep neural networks. Okay? Or deep learning. So the basic building block of the deep learning is your neural network. And for any neural network, the basic building block is your neuron. Okay? And you can say that what is a neural network? It is a network of neurons, and it is, as I told you, that it is structured like our human brain, but it is consist of the mathematical unit that is known as a neuron. So here in this picture, you can see that this circle is basically representing, or you can say this diagram is basically representing one artificial neuron. Okay. So to one neuron, there can be a multiple input. So those input are represented by x1, x2 up to xn. When we send this particular input to a neuron, every neuron is sending with a different weight. That means suppose if I am touching a table and say 100 neurons are in contact, the one which is near to the rough surface is should have a more weight, and those who are near far from those particular rough surface may have a lesser weight. So that way we have to decide the weights also. So every input is associated with one weight. So these weights are associated like W1, W2, Wn. Okay? This is your mathematical unit. There is another kind of a bias is required. So that is one input which is required. And then what we do is we do the weighted sum of these input. Okay? So the summation Wixi, that is the weighted sum of these inputs. And this weighted sum is basically done in your means. If you go send the input to the next one, then the one neuron is connected with the many previous neurons. So it will take the weighted sum of all those previous values, and then that particular previous values is passed through some activation function, and that particular activation function will generate the output. This can be a linear activation function or non-linear activation function. So finally, if you see the architecture of a neural network, you will see that there is a layer which is known as an input layer. There may be certain layer, one or many, which will be named as hidden layer, and finally there will be an output layer. Okay? So we give the input through the input layer. These inputs are multiplied with the random weights or the gradually weights which are there present on those links. We calculate them, we use the bias, we add the bias also, and finally we pass it through a nonlinear activation function, and that determines whether the neuron will fire or it will not fire. Okay. So that is a one basic building block. Okay. Once we have such neuron, what exactly the neural network is? In different architectures, we can join these neural network, and based on that, there will be various popular architecture like a perceptron. There is a multi-layer perceptron, multi-layer feed-forward network, SOFM, radial basis function. Many different kind of neural networks were there into the existence. Okay. So in the deep learning also, what we say that there is a input layer, there will be a hidden layers, and there will be a output layer. Okay, so that will be the architecture normally a deep network follows. So a deep neural network also consists of the various neuron, and every neuron is this kind of a neuron. Okay. So here, if we so this is one very common example, that is MNIST data set, which we have the handwritten numbers. And if we want to identify these numbers, we want to recognize these numbers. So one way is that we extract the features from these numbers. Or suppose you want to do a fingerprint extraction, you extract the features from your fingerprint. So what you do is, when we were working on fingerprint application, we'll see how many such lines are there, how many ridges are there. Then we try to calculate the minutiae also, and then lot of such feature engineering we do, and then we apply the machine learning algorithm. So here also, if you want to, this is a particular uh, example. So this is a number. If you want to extract the features, so 1 0 to 9 can be written in the different ways. So how we can extract the features and how we can make the deep neural architecture of it. So here you can see that there is an input layer. So suppose x1 to xn are the neurons. These are the input layer. There is a hidden unit. So here in this example, I am representing only a one hidden unit, but there are many in deep architecture. What we are saying that there are many such hidden layers are there. And finally, suppose we are dividing into the 10 digits. So there are 10 outputs in the output layer also. So what we can decide is how many neurons will be there in the input layer, how many layers output will be in the output layer based on our application on which we are working. And then we have to take decision for the hidden layers. How many layers will be there, how many neurons will be there, that decision we have to take. Okay? So that is this thing. So this is the one application, and that is the neural architecture. Now, what we say that in the deep architecture, these layers itself work as a feature detector. Okay. So what is the meaning of this feature detector is that if we consider that this is our image, and in this particular image, we have 7 pixels, when 7 columns are there, and 3, 6, 9 this rows are there. So total number of, this is an image of 9 cross 7. So total number of 63 pixels are there. So what I take is I give the image as an input. So in input layer, suppose there are 63 pixels. Okay. Now, if you see that there are certain inputs which have a strong positive weights, there are certain which have a low or zero weights. So that means when we are working on certain kind of features, so those features will be highlighted by certain neurons, and they will, with those neurons will fire, and the rest of the neurons will not fire. Okay. So what we do is, you can see here that suppose if those neurons which fire, so if we talk about the first line, and if we send a if we assume a filter that is testing for a horizontal line, so that for that particular filter, this first line will give a strong signal. It will send a strong signal for a horizontal line. If it is a filter for a vertical line, it will not send a strong signal. So that means if a horizontal line is there, the signal will be strong for this particular line. Okay. If you take this kind of a unit box, then in that case, you can say that our signal is strong for this top left, means the neuron number 1, 2, 3, then 8, 9, 10, and then 15. For this, basically, your signal is bright. Okay. So for some, when we have an input as an image, and every neuron is basically representing, say in case of image, it is representing 1 pixel, then some pixel will be send a strong signal, and some pixel will send the light signal. So what the neuron will do, it will aggregate all the one, and then it will fire the output, whether it will say output maybe a 0 or 1, something like that. Okay. So what we here the thing is that if we are not identifying features, so earlier what we do is we take these numbers, we extract them, we apply the edge detection algorithm, means edge detection features and all, and then with the help of that we are identifying what kind of number it is. So in place of identifying this, your hidden layer will, what it will do, it will identify the features. So your hidden layer will work as a feature detector. So what feature might you expect to good NN to learn? What trend is? So what we want to learn, suppose for this particular case, these vertical lines we want to learn. We want to learn the horizontal lines, suppose. We want to learn the small circles. We want to learn whether, means all, because it is a handwritten, so there is a position invariance also. So we want to learn that also. So a lot of things are there. So when we are working with the handwritten and if we fix 1, 2, 3, 4 feature, then the accuracy is not up to the mark. But when we are inputting the input, a complete input, and we are designing, we are learning the different such feature maps. And if we are learning feature map from one feature map, you are again generating another feature map and so on. So at every level, what you are doing an abstraction of the features, and from lower level features, gradually you are moving to a higher level features, and that kind of thing is basically done with the help of the multiple number of hidden layers. So that is the reason that in the deep neural network, we need multiple deep layers, and that will gradually move towards the higher level of the features. Okay. So you can see that in the one layer, you are detecting the line features. Then in the another layer, you are going for the loop kind of a features. Then the another layer, you are going for the position invariance and so on. So gradually also our mind also work in that way, that we first we see this shallow thing, and from that shallow gradually we go to this coarse features, and gradually we go to the some dense, or हमारा जो abstraction है वो gradually move towards the higher level of features. Okay. So if we have a narrow number, least number of layers, if the system is a complex, and then the complete learning cannot be done. And that was the drawback with the existing multi-layer perceptron, because we have the least number of layers, and there we are only passing few certain number of features. By that we are trying to achieve the 100% of accuracy. Okay, so with the deep learning, what happens is we introduce the concept of number of layers, and the learning is done in the similar way, but it is done in a partial manner. So first we train the first layer, then we train the second layer, then we train the next layer, and so on. This way we can train. And initially the concept was like that every layer is behaving like an autoencoder. Autoencoder is also one kind of a deep learning architecture, and it is used for the unsupervised one also. The earlier concept was like that suppose if we assume that autoencoder generally what have, it has an input, it have one hidden layer and the suppose output layer. Okay, so what we are doing is from input, suppose you want to encode your input in such a way that you can decode your input from that encode generated. Okay. So first you encode, and from those coded features, you can again decode your original input, or 99.9% you can generate your original one. Then that kind of a structure is basically known as an autoencoder. Okay. So what you can say that every non-output layer, in the first case, the first input, and what we are generating a first hidden layer. So first is for hidden layer, what you are doing, you are generating certain features, you are encoding it, and you are encoding your input in terms of features. Okay. Again, your first hidden layer is work as an input, and then those features will go as an input, and then again you encode a second hidden layer, and so way. So we are forcing layer by layer, and from features we are going to from higher level features and so on. That kind of concept we are using in the deep learning. So you can see here, this is the encoder kind of a structure. Input is there. First we encode the hidden layer, and then again we can decode. So that was the concept we were using. Initially, it was the reason that was justified for why we need such deep layers. And as we increase the number of layers, and we can do more higher level of abstraction. And in the neural network, there is no certain thing that how many layers should be there, how many um, you can say filters will be there, and all these things we generate with the help of the hit and trial only. Okay. So what we do is these hidden layers basically they are extracting the features. They are coding the input, and basically what we are saying that they are extracting the features and they are behaving like a good feature detectors, right? So this is the basic idea of deep learning, that every layer is basically working as a feature detector, and those feature detectors, every layer in now you will see that there are a lot of variations in the deep learning. So different kind of encoders are used, different kind of learnings are used, different variations we are using, different training algorithms we are using, different architecture we are using. So there are a lot of variations are there, but this is a basic idea that our feature learning is basically done with the help of this deep architecture, and that's why our things become simplified, and now we are able to achieve a good accuracy with the same neural networks, but the architecture is deep now. And there are changes. I'm not saying that exactly we are using as it is, but there are changes. So what we are saying that in place of a single hidden layer or two hidden layer, we can have a series of hidden layers. And this area is basically in this we can use different type of encoder variation, different kind of layers, and then with the help of that what you are doing. So it's a big area, different kind of a deep learning architecture and come into the existence. And you might have heard, I think in the morning you have a session on the CNN, and then and there are convolutional neural network, then there are the different in the convolution neural network, there are different kind of AlexNet, VGG, ResNet, and many such developments are into the existence. Okay. So that was one thing that I want to tell you, that what basic concept of this deep learning. And then because deep architecture is there, so what is there? A neural network will be there. So what we have to know here is what basically a one neuron is. Then another thing is we have to identify is how we can arrange in different architectures these neurons. So that is the different architecture we are using. Then we have to understand that how we can use these particular neurons for extracting the features. So how we do this learning task, then how we can do the optimization tasks on those features, and finally how we can classify or predict or whatever is our objective. So a lot of applications are there. So how we can solve those applications with this deep architecture. Okay. So one common architecture, this is this convolution neural network. So again the thing comes how we can learn these filters, and yes, so convolution neural network, the initial concept of this deep learning was like that only, that when we are learning features, so basically from input, suppose you are learning something and you are generating the first hidden layer, so there you can say that you are doing some partial unsupervised learning, because there is no target neuron, there is no output layer is very far. So from that, if you are encoding certain features, so what you are doing is you are doing some certain kind of a unsupervised learning there. That was an initial concept. But how we do with the help of this convolution neural network, uh, that I'll little bit cover, because already I think you have done it, but थोड़ा सा मैं इसको एक बार आपको बताती हूँ. ठीक है. So basically in convolution neural network, in the original neural network, what we do is we learn the algorithm. How we learn the algorithm? Basic learning was that you have to do the weight adjustment. That is the learning. So in terms of neural network, if you say that what is learning, so if we have the weight associated with all the links, and if you start with some random weight, what you do is you will have the input, you pass the output. So first random weight, you calculate all the procedure, and you finally see that whether the output is correct or not. If it is not correct, you again update the weights. Okay, for updation, we use the different kind of algorithms. Those are basically known as the learning algorithms, as the backpropagation we use, or some different learning algorithms we are using. So those things are basically the what we are learning is the adjusting the parameters. So originally in artificial neural network, what we do is we just update the weights. Now here in the convolutional neural networks, in addition to adjusting the weights, the idea is that we have to learn the kernels also, we have to learn the filters also, and we treat them just like a parameter of our classification model. So when we talk about the hyperparameter, the kernels is one of our hyperparameter that we want to learn. Okay? So again, suppose we consider the same thing, that this is your image is the input, and you want to apply this to a neural network. So weight, how we'll decide weight matrix, how you will say. So if we are considering this feed-forward network, so in ANN, what is exactly a feed-forward network? You have to take the input layer, you have to take the one hidden layer, and you have to take the output layer. Okay. If you have, suppose, this 3 million input size, then the weight matrix will be 3 million into this 1000 आपके क्या है, hidden nodes है. तो 1000 अगर आपके hidden nodes है, तो आपके पास में 3 million inputs, and उसके साथ में आपके पास में क्या आ रहा है, ये हर एक से connect होगा. Feed forward is what? It will connect with each and every neuron. So into 1000. So this is the size of this particular weight. Then again here it is 1000, and suppose we have only two outputs, say cat or dog or something like that. So in that case, this 1000 into this many hidden neurons are there. So this is the size of the weight matrix, and we have to update these particular weights. But when we talk about the convolutional neural network, we have the different type of layers. I hope that you will know these things. That is a convolution layer, pooling layer, dense layer, and the output. Okay. So that if we differentiate it with the multi-layer perceptron, what is the thing here is that this is a fully connected network, whereas this is a sparse connected network, okay, or a partially connected network. Why it is so? In the feed-forward neural network, what we do is every neuron is connected with every neuron of the next layer. So the connection is very dense. किस तरह का था आपका connection? बहुत dense connection था. And then again, how hidden layer, every neuron is connected with every neuron of the output layer. So this kind of a complicated connection, fully connected layer was there. Whereas in this convolutional neural network, you can see that this is the input. There may be a certain neuron. This type of things are there, that some may be partially connected. Some are connected, some are not connected. So the connection is basically sparse. So if we talk about the convolutional neural network, there are two important features of that. That is, one is the sparse connection, and the another one is a weight sharing. So with the help of that, our lot of parameters are reduced in the convolutional neural network. Okay. So in the convolution, I hope again that this is the input image. What we do in the case of the convolution, we apply certain filter. So suppose this is your some filter. So it will overlap over a region, and what it will calculate, it will do the convolution over it. Basically, it is doing nothing, but it is a sum of product. So if you see this overlapped area with this filter, you will find the output as a 0. So what you do is you just overlap this kernel pixel by pixel, you move, and finally what you get is this is a feature map. So this is the input image, and at the first layer you are getting this output. So this feature map, you see that there is a reduction in the size. So the important thing is that here is you have to check the dimension. What is the dimension of your input? What is the dimension of your hidden layers? And accordingly, you have to do the calculations and you have to adjust your parameters also. Okay? Now in existence, we have a lot of such features in image processing. You can use the identity feature or a mask, or you can use for edge detection the different mask. It may be a Laplacian or some Robert Privet. Lot of masks are there. We can use the mask for the sharpening, also for blurring, for Gaussian blurring, and many things. These are the existing, some masks are there. So what we do is we apply these masks and we do the convolution. Okay. Now, if we do the convolution, there is another term that is known as a stride. So in convolution, what is stride? This mask is your 3x3 window. It can be a 1D also, 2D also, 3D also. Here we are considering a 2D example for an image. So if you move this mask, by a 1 pixel, then you will say that the stride is 1. If you move this mask by 2 pixel, then we'll say that stride is 2. So this is again one of the one parameters which we have to see, variable which you have to see that what is the value of the stride. So if it is a stride is equals to 1, you first suppose we are a 3x3 mask. So 1, 2, 3, and this 3x3 area will be covered 1, 2, 3, 11, 12, 13, and 21, 22, 23. If you move this mask, then we come to the 2, and then 2, 3, 4, 12, 13, 14, and 22, 23, 24 will be covered. So we are moving the pixel only by a mask window, only by a 1. Okay. So this is the thing. Then another term which we use in the case of this convolutional neural network is pooling. So what we are doing is, for reducing the dimensionality, we use this concept of the pooling, and this is used for subsampling. You can say that. So different kind of pooling you can do: max pooling, average pooling, sum pooling. So if we take a pool mask of say 2 by 2, so in this 2 by 2, whatever be the maximum value, say 6 is maximum, so it will come here. In 2, 4, 7, 8, 8 is maximum, so 8 will come here. So this is basically a pooling. Okay, so this is known as max pooling. If you are taking average pooling, then you will take the average of these 4 pixels and that value will come here. If you are taking sum pooling, then you will take the sum of these and you will do. So with the help of that, you will see that this 4x4, suppose this is a feature vector, and if we are applying this pooling over this, then we are reducing the dimensionality. So it is used for downsampling our feature set. Okay. Then once we are, suppose if we are using this convolution, or you are using then convolution, so you will see that the window input size and output size doesn't match. Even if I consider this as an input image, then if I apply a 3x3 filter over, assuming this one as a center one, then in that case, my few pixels are not overlapped. Okay. So what I do, I start this from 6, because from 6, my complete 3x3 kernel will be overlapped. So this overlapping is not complete. So to make the output image size equal, we use the concept of this padding. So we can do the different kind of a padding. So we can do the padding with the zeros. We can use the same boundary windows, values can be replicated, and that's where we can actually what we can do is we can equate the size of the image with the output image. So sometimes this is another concept we use, that whether you are using the padding or not. So if we take one more parameter p that is used for padding, and p is equal to 0 if you are not using this padding, and if you are using a padding, then you will say that 0 padding we are using, so we pad the picture with the 0. Okay. So Or what you can do is you drop the part of the image where the filter does not fit completely, and in that case we are only doing the valid padding, and then the size of the output will be reduced. Okay. So these are the few parameters which we use. So window size, W is your that size, the receptive field size of the convolutional layer. So filter size is this stride, the zero padding, the amount of zero padding you are using, and the depth of the convolution layer. These are the various things. Based on that, this formula is there. Another thing is we can use different kind of activation function. One of the activation function which we are using here is that ReLU function, and this is known as the rectified linear unit. And in that case, what happens is our neuron will either have a positive acceleration or it will have a zero. Okay. So in place of taking this means the output will be whatever be the input. So either it will be 0 or 1. So that means always the output will be a positive. Okay. One more concept we use in the convolution, that is the flattening. So when we are learning the layers, what you do is when you reach to a last layer, now you want to pass it to suppose to a feed forward network. Then what you do is, if you have suppose this is a 2D feature map, then what you do in flattening is you make a 1D vector out of it, and now again it becomes one input layer. Okay. So this concept is basically known as a flattening. Whatever be the 2D or 3D, you reduce it to a single 1D vector. Okay. And lastly, once we have the hidden layers, we connect our convolutional neural network with the fully connected layer. And this layer is basically a dense connection. So this is the densely connected layer. Right? So this one is a densely connected layer. So you will see that because here we are using the all neurons are connected with the next layer. So this is the fully connected layer, and we can use the different activation function here like the sigmoid, softvex, etc. For getting the output. Now, once we have this particular kind of a convolutional neural network, then initially you have seen that there is a sparse connection, and later on what happens when we go to the fully connected layer, our connection becomes the dense. Okay. So we'll say that there are initial layers are the sparse layers, and at the end what happens is there will be a dense layers. Okay. And it will be implemented as a feed forward neural network. Now in a feed forward neural network means, suppose for this particular neuron, if I say that which neuron will participate, so that those who have say suppose red one, so I'll say that for this particular hidden layer, so only neuron which are participate is this one, or the which have the red links. So that means not every neuron is participating in this one. Okay. But suppose for this, in this neuron is also participating. And when we come to the higher layer, you will see that this neuron also participate and the first neuron also participate. So at the end, this last layer has the contribution of all the neuron layers. Okay. So that way the learning is done in the same way. Whatever be the connections means actually what we do is when we are talking about the images, if you take the neuron, only what you do is you take the neighborhood neuron and you apply the filters. So for one particular hidden layer neuron, only those neighboring pixels are participating. So that connection is a sparse in nature, whereas in the feed forward network that was fully connected. Okay. So once we have this sparse connection, so this neuron will first hidden neuron will be trained by the different input neurons, second will be trained by a different input neuron, third will be trained by different, and finally these four will contribute to train the next layer of neurons and so on. And this is a feed-forward network. So this way the weight will be calculated and the neuron will further transmit the value. Once we reach to the output layer, again what happens that the connection back propagation will be taken into care, and that propagation will be the same as we have in the feed forward one, but it will use only the sparse connection. Okay. And nowadays we doesn't need to take so much headache, but our these all TensorFlow and PyTorch and all these take care of it. So that back propagation will take care directly by those things. Okay. So that is the thing. So I think it is 12:13. Okay. So there are few parameters which are important in this case of the convolutional neural network. So when we are designing the convolutional neural network, we have to take care of these parameters. And when we see that if we see in the artificial neural networks, we will have so much of layers, then in the original thing, the number of parameter will be too much. But when we go for the convolutional networks, initial sparse connections reduces our number of parameters, and finally we achieve a higher accuracy than our original feed-forward networks. So that is the reason that lot of application nowadays we are solving with the help of these convolutional neural networks. So here you can see that there is an input with a size 227 cross 227 cross 3. This normally in image we have a RGB layer, RGB image. So what happens is there are 3 layers, and suppose the size is 227 cross 227. So 227 cross 227 cross 3, this is your input size. Okay. Now for that, suppose you want to take the number of filters K as a 96 filters. So and K is representing here the convolutional filters K. So now there is first convolutional layer, so that is K. And in that, what we say that, so normally in CNN, I think you have seen that there is a convolutional layer, then pooling layer, then again convolutional layer, then pooling layer, then convolutional layer, pooling layer, or there may be a continuous convolutional layer. Finally, we have the last hidden layer, and then that we do a flattening, and finally, then we connect it to some feed-forward network. Okay. So here K, you can say that in the first convolutional layer, we are taking the 96 filters. The filter size is 11. So that means you are using 11 cross 11 filters. S is equals to 4. That means suppose you are using the stride as 4. That means you will move the window by 4 pixels. Okay, padding is 0. So what will be the size of this output? W2. So this will be 55 height or weight जो आपका 55 by 55 होगा. The depth will remain same 3 because we have the 3 layers. So that will this one. Parameters needed is, so how many filters are there? 96 filters are there, and the size is 11. So how many parameters you need? 11 into 11 into 3 into 96. So 34K parameters are needed. Okay? These are the formulas which you can use for calculation of the height. Things which you can understand that this is the case. So this is okay. Then next layer is a pool layer. So in the max pool, the input is what happens in the previous layer? The output is 55 cross 55 cross 3. So this is your 55 cross 55, and how many filters are there? 96 filters are there. Now we take the size F as 3. So that means we'll take the 3 cross 3 window, and stride we are taking as a 2. So what you are doing is, after pooling, suppose you take the 2 cross 2, then you reduce the size by half. If you are taking 3 cross 3, then you are reduce the size by 1/3 approximately. Okay. So that way we do the pooling. Parameters here are 0 because there is no weights here. Up in pooling layer, there is nothing like a concept of a weight. Whereas in the convolution layer, basically those filters are having a weight. So those are parameters which are adjusted. Whereas in the pooling layer, there is no concept of such weights are there. Okay. Then again, there is a next convolution layer. So similarly, we'll calculate. Then pooling layer, again layer, then suppose a convolution layer, then convolution layer, then max pooling. Finally, we do the flattening, and then we connect it to a dense layer, and that is the, if we calculate the total number of parameters, then it will come around this 27.55. 27. Okay. So this is an example from, this is basically AlexNet kind of architecture in which we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 convolutional layers, and then these 3 layers. So total 8 layer architecture it is there. Okay. So this type of way, this is the way, these are the things which we, when we are working with the CNN, because a lot of these TensorFlow and PyTorch, these are giving you a direct functions for that. But what we have to understand that what is the significance of these parameters, what values are adjusted, what functions we are using. You have to understand these hyperparameter, what is the number of filters, what is the size of filters, and doing the variation in that, you can do certain experimentation. Okay. So that's basically the CNN. And finally, when we flatten it in this dense layer, and at the end there is an output layer. So this is, all these are the dense layers, and those dense layer will finally classify whatever is your task. Okay. So you provide your input image to a convolution layer. You'll choose parameters, apply filters with strides, padding if requires, perform convolution on the image and apply ReLU activation section to the matrix, perform pooling to reduce the dimensionality of the size, add as many as convolution layer until satisfied, flatten the output and feed into a fully connected layer, output the class using an activation function, logistic regression with cost functions, and classify the image. So this is the one kind of a deep architecture which is there. And based on CNN, various researcher, you can say that they developed the different architecture, that is LINET, AlexNet, JeffNet, GoogleNet, VGGNet, ResNet. And this is ResNet by Microsoft. It is the newest one. And the error rate is 3.6. And it is claimed that it is less than a human. Means if we have thousands of pictures and if you have to classify them as a say, cat and dog, then we may confused by in some pictures or some species. But this ResNet is only have an error of 3.6, and we are claiming more than human accuracy. Okay, so these are the different time, and gradually the number of layers are also increased from AlexNet to ResNet. I think in ResNet around 150s we have this particular number of layers. So that is the different CNN architectures are there. Okay. So this kind of, basically when we have the output and what we say. So in CNN you will see that when we were learning the features, that is something little bit kind of an unsupervised in unsupervised fashion. But at the end we have the output, labeled output also, and we do the updation. So it is kind of a supervised. But these deep architectures, these ANN can be used for all kind of things. We can use it for supervised one also, for unsupervised one also, and for reinforcement learning also, as I told earlier. So if we come to the unsupervised one, the clustering is the important concept. Okay. So in clustering, there are two different kind of clustering approaches. Majorly, there are various variation. I'm talking broadly about the say clustering and the hierarchical clustering, and this is very important. Unsupervised learning, you means and all. So these are the important clustering algorithms. Okay. So when unsupervised means if we doesn't have the labeled samples, then how we can do the learning. Okay. So collection and labeling of a large data set itself is a big challenge. And nowadays, if when we are working with healthcare or agriculture, and we have total dependency on that data set. If we don't have a labeled data set, so if we work on existing data set, then there is nothing new. If we create a data set, then it is a challenging task how to create a labeled data set. So for example, like we are working on some cancer disease identification, then collection of a data set from its hospital itself is a challenging task. Then consulting the doctor and labeling it and storing it in some particular way itself, it's a big challenge. So that kind of a thing means, can we do the unsupervised kind of a learning also? So for that, the class basically in class unsupervised learning, what you do is you do the clustering task, and then that clustering can be based on some existing features. For example, just I told you earlier that you can classify the fruits. You don't know that what fruit they are, but they are classifying them on the basis of the size and shape. Or suppose you want to recommend some policies to a bank customers, how you will recommend. So on the basis of the age you are recommending, or on the basis of their investment in you are recommending. So those kind of thing. So in the social network, there are various things on the basis of their interest, their different interest we are recommending. So various situations are there, applications are there where you need the unsupervised kind of a learning, and for that this clustering is one of the important thing which is required. Even when you are doing a clustering, for suppose you have a application of you have a album, photo album, and in that photo album you want to categorize it. How you will categorize it? So even nowadays you will see that your Google Photos are categorized with the help of the events also, with the persons also, and जो भी photo है accordingly इसके folder में it is automatically set. So that kind of clustering. So automatically this clustering is going on, and this clustering is one of the important tasks. So what we do is, in this, we doesn't have a labeled samples, and with the help of the unlabeled samples, what we can do is we have to do the learning task. Okay? So unsupervised learning are important. You can see. So there are various clustering algorithms is, and basically what we do in the clustering is, so I'll discuss one method, that is the Euclidean distance based method. So what you do is you make initially,
Ma'am,
suppose
you are
you
not
choose
audible. Yes, yes.
Hello.
No, no, no. Now you are audible.
Okay. How much time?
Hello?
Last 5 minutes, no? Okay, so I'll wind up within 5
Yes,
minutes.
ma'am. Yes,
So
ma'am.
what actually happened is that in clustering, what you do is you'll start with some points. Suppose we are talking about the pixel one image only. So within the image, what you will say that you'll start with some random pixel values. And what you will do is you will assume those random pixel values as your cluster centers or a cluster seeker. Now what happens is you calculate the distance from each and every pixel with the every cluster center, and you place your that particular input to that particular cluster. Okay. So once you say initially you have a one x1 as a cluster center, now few more pixels are into your cluster. Again, what you will do is you recalculate your cluster center, and then you do it till your cluster center becomes the matlab, till it is converges. That time till that what you do is you do this clustering task. Okay. So basically here how we calculate the distance. So for that particular distance, what you can do is you can use the concept of the any distance criteria. Mostly we can say that if we have 2 pixels, then their distance we can calculate with the help of their x values and y values. So for that we can calculate the Euclidean distance. Okay. So once our clusters are converged means now later on our cluster center is not changing. These particular clusters is we are saying that these are a valid partitioning of your input, and these can be referred as the Voronoi partitioning. Okay. So this is one way by which what you can do is you can do a clustering, and one common algorithm which is used is basically known as the k-means algorithm, which is used. Another is basically a hierarchical kind of a clustering, in which what you do is You compute the Euclidean distance between the each pair of patterns. Okay? You create the cluster composed of this new xin xj. Replace xin xj by the cluster vector c in this, and again we treat the cluster. What you do is means basically you do it in hierarchical way. First level, then second level, then third level, and you do it till until no point left to be a part of some clusters, and there is no means till you reach to the convert. So I'm finding it here, but not going into much depth of it. So there are various algorithms which are into existence. One is the k-means. Even in ANN, the SOFM is one of the important unsupervised learning. With k-means autoencoders, the concept which I told you, that is also used for the unsupervised learning. These PCA, auto association, all these are basically some unsupervised learning method, and all these concepts are used with this deep architecture also. So briefly, we recently means presently we are working on one cancer detection problem. So I'm not exactly current database which we have collected, we are trying to achieve the result, but on the sample histopathological images we have generated few results. So I'm just showing these results like that. So we have the package data set. On that, what we do, we apply the CNN, we use various parameters and try to achieve the accuracy. So these are just sample, they are not finally means on our actual data set. These are on the data set is also the existing one, and we try to use these different CNN architecture, and then we calculate the different precision, accuracy and all. So that's all basically. We are also working in the field of agriculture and the crop prediction, etc., where we are trying to calculate the results with the help of the satellite image as well as with this categorical data. So in nutshell, what we can say that these new deep neural networks, they are very effective for a wide range of application. This is possible because of the parallelism. We don't know in TensorFlow how all these things are going on, but with the help of that, we are able to train a large set of data set, and we are means earlier this much of computational complexities we are not able to handle, but now we are able to handle such kind of things. It automatically builds the high-level representation, means the features and embedding which are required with using the sparse connections and all. And it have the efficacy in various domains like speech, vision, language modeling, user prediction, language understanding, translation, advertising, captioning, etc., etc. And so it is basically, you can say that a deep learning, it is an important tool in building an intelligent system. Okay, so that's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am, for the informative session. Is there any queries from the participant sides? I can't see any query in the chat section. So thank you so much, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
So